welcome back to Just Guitar Talk. Happy Sunday, everybody, from sunny Austin, Texas. Today I wanted to talk about amp tones and a lot of stuff about amps and amps I've had, amps I would like to have, amps I've tried, and all kinds of stuff. So you can see right here, this is my current amp, just a practice amp. It's the Fender LT25, and this is a little digital guy, and it's pretty good. I got it for like 150 bucks, and that's just a steal. It's loud. I would actually even say maybe too loud for home practicing, depending on what kind of home you live in. I'm an apartment dweller, so it's pretty loud. I don't really turn it up that loud. But it's got lots of different amp settings and amp tones, got effects and distortion and lots of cool presets. I actually like, let's see here, this is just a Fender clean. I like this one right here, the 50s Twin. Whoop. That one's really cool. I like that a lot. And, you know, I haven't played a lot of Fender amps in the past, but that one's really cool. It's a nice Fender clean sound. I also use this quite a bit. This one's called like Silky Solo. That one's fun, just for all out lead noodling. So this is a digital amp, and I have my notes right in front of me for all the stuff that I want to talk about. And although I will try to keep the video short-ish. So this is a digital amp, which I'm not hot about. Digital amps can do a lot of stuff, but they don't sound awesome to me. But for practice situations, they think they're very useful, very practical. If you don't want to hook a bunch of stuff up, or break out a pedal board or anything like that, you can just have a small digital amp with a bunch of presets, and I think that's really helpful. But as far as amps go, we've got solid state to digital. To talk about amps that I've had, I got to give a shout out to the Peavey Bandit. I mean, everybody owes a debt of gratitude to the Peavey Bandit. We all had it back in the day, especially if you were playing guitar in the 90s. You definitely, had a Peavey Bandit 112. And those are the amps that I think a lot of us learned on, and they were affordable. Didn't break the bank for our parents, and I saw those at a lot of high school gigs, and they're pretty reliable. Peavey gets a bad rap, but they make decent, affordable stuff. You know what I mean? It's not cool to play Peavey, and I don't really, I haven't played a Peavey in years, and I read about stuff that they make now, and it's fairly well reviewed, and I think they're still making the Bandit, and it's even better now, which is cool. But there's just so many options now, just so many options. But that was my first amp that I ever had, and I really didn't know what an amp could do, and I only really focused on guitars. And I think a lot of people still focus on guitars. You always hear about people spending a lot of money on a guitar, but not so much on an amp. They always skimp on the amp, but it's really the other piece of the puzzle, you know what I mean? And it's super important because that really completes the tone, the whole thing, and it really affects the whole feel. And it'll affect the way you play for sure. And which brings me to the first tube amp that I ever played. And playing tube amps, that really brings out your dynamics. It's got the feel, it's got the oomph, it's got all the articulation. And a buddy of mine that I was in a band with in high school, he got a little Mesa Boogie, I think like a 20 watt or maybe less than that. And it was smaller than our other solid state amps that we all had. But it blew everybody out of the water, volume and feel and sound. And we're just like, oh my God, this is what the music that we listen to on CDs sounds like, and it was crazy. And this, as soon oh, there's the iPhone. But as soon as we heard that, we're like, oh my god, this is what a real amp sounds like. And Maces sound good. I think Maces are great. They seem a little stuck in the '90s, kind of. They really haven't changed a whole lot. They're just still making like big old 100-watt amps, and they have the smaller wattage too, but they just don't seem to be changing in the same way that other amp companies are. But I love Mesa Boogie. I especially love that. I love that 525 combo. And the Mesa Boogie store on Sunset in Los Angeles is a great place. Great staff, awesome guitars, awesome amps, and I always enjoyed going there. But Mesa Boogie was great, and I think I would still like to own one at some point, maybe one of those 525s. But I don't know, they're still kind of expensive, and I don't know. But after that, I had a Marshall for a very short period of time. Just maybe I want to say a couple months. I actually just bought this, with the help of some good friends. I got this big rock and roll 100-watt half stack rig, which I always wanted a half stack. Not because I actually wanted one. I just thought that's what you were supposed to have. And that was a Marshall Mode 4 half stack, like 100-watt head. I had no idea what to do with that thing. I barely remember what it sounded like. But yeah, that was way too much amp for me. But I've seen John 5 use one, and he makes that sound really, really good. Other Marshall amps that I played, the Marshall JVM. Oh man, that amp distortion is awesome. So awesome. And I think that's another thing with amps. You got to decide what kind of a player you are. Either you want amp distortion and you use the distortion and crunch sounds from your amp, or you like to use your amps as clean pedal platforms. And I love, amps with awesome distortions. Marshall JVM, Orange Rocker. Oh man, Oranges sound brutal. They're so good. Hughes and Kettner as well. And I think if I were just like playing rock or punk all the time, then I would definitely go for one of those amps. But for the most part, I'm a clean amp pedal platform guy. I like to get distortion from pedals and things like that. So when I look for an amplifier, I don't look for distortion or multiple channels or anything like that. Just single channel amps are perfect for me. Which, speaking of Marshall, I really, really enjoy the Marshall Origin series. They are made in the Far East, I believe. They're very affordable, and they rock. They're awesome. They're kind of like old school plexis, and I played the Origin 50 as well as Origin 20. I love the power scaling. To me, if you're going to spend money on an amplifier, they gotta have power scaling. It's so practical. You know what I mean? Guitar players don't have a lot of money to spend on amplifiers, and you have to play in all types of environments. Whether it be in the home or in the studio or in a live venue. And having the ability to power scale is huge these days. It's just huge. You can bump it down to 0.5 watts for your apartment, and then you can go to a gig and bump it right back up to 20 or 50 or whatever. And it's nice to not have to buy an attenuator separately to do that. So really, if I look for an amp now, it has to have attenuation. But there's lots of different things that you can get to, like I know that Two Notes. Two Notes has a new thing that's like cap simulator and attenuator as well. So there's lots of different solutions for that too. And it depends if you're just a home player or if you're a if you gig out and things like that, then you could have a really cool amp head that you could have at home, have it go right into a load box and then into your computer, and you can even record that way too. There's so many different scenarios that you actually don't even really need a speaker if you don't want to. But those are the Marshalls that I played and I liked. Now, an amp I was obsessed with for a long time was the Tone King Imperial. These things look super cool. They look super mid-century modern. They're kind of like old 1950s TV sets or something like that. And they have like, all kinds of cool colors like sonic blue and stuff like that. They're just super mid-century modern looking, which is my vibe. I like that a lot. And they just sound super cool. They sound nice, and I played an ES335 through that, and it got me that great woody tone that a lot of people like, and I was looking for at the time, and thought it sounded great with an ES335. Very heavy though, very heavy, expensive as well. So I didn't own it, but I was very lucky to get a chance to play it several times, and I thought it was fantastic. Now, I didn't own an amp for a very long time after I got rid of my Marshall, and I was just kind of an acoustic player and didn't play a whole lot of electric guitar. And the next amp that I bought was actually a practice amp, and to this day, it's my favorite practice amp. I actually regret selling it. I bought and sold everything I own, essentially. You know how it is, but I got a Yamaha THR-10. This thing rips, man. It looks cool. It's got those glowing lights inside the speakers. It's battery powered, or you can plug it in. It's nice not to have those wires. Super lightweight. You can bring it anywhere. You can play music through it. You can play your jam tracks through it, plug in, and it's plenty loud for your apartment. You can download patches for it that are all super cool. So you can, and it's got like 5 banks where you can, choose your clean tone, your heavy tone, your amp on the verge of breakup tone, whatever. And I had I downloaded 5 patches that I used all the time, and it was great. And you could just pick it up and play, and it made me play more because it was so easy to just pick up and start playing. And anything, that's the whole point, isn't it? You want something that is easy. You want to make, if a piece of gear that you own is just making your life harder, then you're not going to want to play it. You know what I mean? So if you can find a piece of gear that just makes your life easier, then that's what it's all about. And so I had that for a long time, and I really miss it. And I'm going to get another one for sure. The new ones look really cool. They're like 30 watts. I don't think if I need that much, and that's almost like real amp territory. The amp I got after that was a Roland Blues Cube. Now this is a solid state amp, but they try to model the solid state amp after a certain amp type. Now the base Roland Blues Cube, and I'm talking about the hot, the 30 watt ones, those are modeled after a Fender Tweed, and they sound cool. They sound just like a tube amp. They got power scaling. You can go from 0.5 watts up to 30 watts, and they got different ones. They have of course, they have the Fender Tweed. They have the British Modified EL84, which is the Voxy one, which sounds great. It sounds just like an AC30. And I actually got the Guitar Center limited edition Special Boss Drive. I forget what it was called, but it's modeled after JTM 45, like KT88 tubes, and I really liked it. Now, I liked it, but I bought a Rocky Repaired Amp clone pedal, and I plugged that into it, and man, it just came to life. And I just used it as a clean boost, and you could probably use another clean boost and it would sound just as good. But yeah, I had like the gain pretty much all the way off, and with the output and like the tone at like, I want to say noon, and it brought the amp to life. And I loved playing that thing and gain stacking on it, and it got super loud, or it was quiet enough for the apartment. It took pedals like an absolute dream, and it was light, and I probably paid like $375 plus shipping, tax, and all that. So it didn't break the bank, and it was awesome. Guess what? I sold it. But I might buy it back. I don't know. I might get another one. They're so cheap. You might as well. You know what I mean? It's one of those grab and go amps. I forget why I sold it. I don't know. But talking about tubes as well, there's a lot of companies that make modeling amplifiers, both digital and solid state, that model the different tube types. So rather than saying, oh, this is a crunch amp, this is this amp, clean amp, blah, 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 they're like, okay, you can have EL84, EL34, KT88, KT66, 6V6, 6L6. And I bought a Blackstar ID, which had, those different choices. And I got to play around with all the different tube types. And I found that KT88 was my favorite of the tube types. And that's what led me to seek out the Boss Drive Roland Blues Cube. And so if you wanted to have an amp that had all those different tube types, that's a really cool one, the Blackstar ID. And that's, it's pretty cheap. It's got effects too. Doesn't really have oomph like, a lot of other amps do because it's digital. Also, Yamaha makes this head called the THR 100 that does that too. And it's solid state, and it does kind of feel more like a real amp. It takes pedals wonderfully, and it's loud too. But it does have power scaling down to 25, which is pretty loud. But that's a good amp too if you want to experiment with different tubes and kind of figure out which tube you might like. There's not really a lot of amps out there that are KT88 or KT66. I know Blackstar just put out maybe a year or two ago like a one-channel KT88 amp. They also did a EL34 and a 6V6 or something like that. But single channel amps are awesome. I think they're great. But the Roland Blues Cube, man, I super recommend those. They're really cool, super affordable, and they sound great, and they're light as hell. And it's got that tube tone that you're looking for if you are a tube person. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is my new infatuation. Well, it's not really new infatuation because they've been out for a little bit, about a minute here, maybe a year or so, but they just released some new ones. I absolutely love the Fender Tone Master, both the Deluxe and the Twin. They look the same, and to me, they sound the same, and I love the new Deluxe Reverb, Tone Master Deluxe Reverb, the Blonde Edition. It just sounds smoother, not as bright, because they got rid of that bright mod, and it just looks cool. And it's so light. It is super light, and it's got one up on the Blues Cube for me because to me it sounds better plugged in direct to a DAW. Whereas plugging in direct from the Blues Cube didn't sound awesome to me. It was like, this is not as cool as it sounds in person. But plugging in the Tone Master into a DAW sounded great to me, and almost just like very similar to how it sounded in the room. But if you're a tube person, don't sleep on a lot of these modeling things that are coming out. They're all fantastic, well, not all of them, but a lot of them are fantastic, and it's getting better all the time. Don't carry around all those clunky tube amps if you don't have to. They're great, they sound amazing, and if that's your jam, keep it your jam, but, give these things a shot. The Roland Blues Cube, Yamaha THR 100, the Tone Master Twins, man, they sound great. Now, I haven't played with a Kemper. I have a lot of friends who are totally into them. I've seen a lot of people use them on stage. I know I saw Tears for Fears, and all their guitar players had Kempers on stage, and everybody's doing it, but man, it's super expensive, and it just looks super confusing and hard. It's a little bit scary looking to me, all those buttons. It's almost like looking at like a recording console. You're like, it's way too many buttons. It's scary looking. But, I like to mess around with it, you know what I mean? So many options. You can pretty much download any amp in the world, or, choose to profile your own favorite amps, which is pretty cool. I love options, who doesn't want to have, a bunch of options? But at the same time, as much as having options is great, I like an amp that just does one thing really well. And again, I don't want to work hard to use something. If something's super easy to use, you just plug in and play, and it sounds great, that's going to make me want to play it. So that's my rant about amps for today. And, I hope everybody's having a great day. And I hope you enjoyed watching the video. And we'll see you next week.